Welcome back to my channel. I'm Nini and this is Suspicious Minds. On here I talk about true crime, unsolved disappearances, and generally creepy stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click on subscribe and set your notifications. And if you like this video, please click on like, and it would be amazing if you can share this with your friends and family. The case I'm looking at today did not happen in South Africa, but it was committed by a South African in the beautiful country of Botswana. It's one of our neighboring countries. It's a very interesting case. I still remember when this happened. Also, as with all my other videos, please remember that I never try to romanticize or glorify any criminals. I want to inform people about crime so that we can be suspicious and maybe recognize the signs in people so that we can be vigilant and possibly prevent crimes like this to happen to us or our loved ones. So with all of that said, let's have a look at the case for today. It is the year 1996. The music we listened to were Celine Dion's Because You Loved Me, Toni Braxton's Unbreak My Heart, and who could forget the Macarena. The movies that was in the cinemas were Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise. It was From Dusk Till Dawn, and the very shocking and eye-opening Trainspotting. In the world, in 1996, the following events took place. On the 23rd of January, the first ever version of the programming language Java was released. On March the 13th in Scotland, an unemployed shopkeeper, Thomas Hamilton, walked into the Dunblane Primary School, opened fire and killed 16 children and one teacher before taking his own life. Also in 1996 in Botswana, the Universal Pensions Program was launched, and that is a program that allowed every person on retirement age in Botswana to be able to get pension. So that was a very big thing for the citizens of Botswana. And what also happened in 1996 in Botswana was the case that we will be looking at today. Our case today starts on the 26th of January 1996, when Marina Wolmerans, a young adolescent female, walked into her family home. She shared this home with her father, Tini Wolmerans, her mother, Ria Wolmerans, and her two siblings. The home was located in the very affluent neighborhood of Pakalani. Pakalani was a gated community and was also referred to as Little Sandton. And Sandton is a posh neighborhood in Johannesburg, South Africa. Pakalani was situated in the capital of Botswana, Gaborone, and the reason why everybody referred to it as Little Sandton is because a lot of the South African expats lived in this area. As Marina walked into her family home, she came upon a gruesome scene. She found her mother, Ria, deceased in the entryway of the home. She could see that there was blood pooling around her mother's abdomen, and she immediately called the police. What was so shocking about this case, besides the fact that her mother was dead, was that Any crime was unheard of in Botswana, let alone a murder in this affluent community. To understand how Ria ended up deceased in her own family home, we're going back to the year of 1992, when two other South Africans moved to Pakalane. And those two people were Justin and Mariette Bosch. And they moved into the same gated community about 2 blocks away from Tini and Ria Wolmerans. At that stage, Botswana was experiencing enormous economic growth, and they drew from the neighboring countries' skills. So they had a lot of expats who were engineers, medical doctors, artisans, etc., who would come to Botswana at that stage. These expats would go to Botswana and earn a lot of money and live very comfortable lives. Also, there was a very low crime rate in Botswana, and those were the two reasons, the money and the low crime rate, why Justin and Mariette decided to move to Botswana with their 2 children in 1992. It was said in court that Mariette lived a life of luxury. They had very expensive cars, more than one. They had full-time helpers in the house, in the garden. She went gambling, shopping. She had time to do all the hobbies that she wanted. And they made friends with a couple, Ria and Tini Wolmerans. It was said that they spent social nights together, that they went on holiday together. And I think it's safe to say that these two families were best friends. Mariette and Ria would go on cooking classes together. They'll take turns to take the kids to school, and they were best of friends. In 1995, this idyllic lifestyle came to an end when Justin was killed in a car accident. Mariette was suddenly left a widow at the age of 45. But her friend Ria stepped in, and she tried to be there for Mariette around each and every corner that she could. She invited Mariette to their house. They would socialize even more. She was there for Mariette to cry on her shoulder. She was there to console her. And Ria actually felt that she's really helping her friend through this grieving process. But unfortunately, what happened in the background, what Ria wasn't aware of, is a lot more grim than a best friend being there during the grieving process. And that takes us back to the crime scene in 1996. When the police arrived at the home, they immediately made this out as a burglary, even though nothing was stolen. They thought that the burglars came in, they didn't know that Ria was there, they shot her and ran away. But there was no forced entry. They did, however, find 2 9mm shell casings at the scene. And the police basically just closed the case and washed their hands from anything and said, burglary. The family accepted this, and it was just as if Ria was killed by a burglar. Lo and behold, 1 month after Ria's murder, Tini Wolmerans and Mariette Bosch moves in together with their children and become a blended family. Merely 2 months after that, they spread the news to their family in South Africa that they are engaged and that they will be going shopping for wedding clothes in South Africa. Now, it may seem that these two people found each other in unfortunate events. Her husband dies, his wife is murdered, and they got together because they knew each other beforehand. The kids got together well. They loved Mariette and they loved Tini. But the killer didn't count on one person to not be happy with this situation. And that person is called Judith Bosch, Mariette Bosch's sister-in-law. What I could gather was that Judith was Justin's brother's wife. So that is how she was Mariette's sister-in-law. Now, Judith made no secret to anyone about the fact that she could not stand Mariette. I don't know why, but it was apparently a well-known fact that she didn't like her. In fact, she loathed Mariette. And she was the person that actually called the police in Botswana and told them that, you know, that burglary that you closed, the case in Pakalane, did you know that Mariette and Tini moved in together a month after the murder? But not only did Judith have gossip and stories to tell, she had another very big secret to give the police. She had the murder weapon. Judith told the police that 2 days before Ria's murder, Mariette traveled to Polokwane in South Africa, and that is about 6 hours drive from Gaborone. And keep that in mind because it will come up later in terms of what Mariette's defense was. She traveled to a friend of hers and she asked the friend if she could borrow a firearm, a 9mm to be precise. She told this friend that she will be doing target practice with the gun. Mariette traveled back to Botswana. She did not declare the gun at the border post, and that in itself is a crime. After the murder, and this I cannot understand, I don't know why she did this, but she went to Judith and her husband, but she spoke to the husband and she asked him, Justin's brother, to please keep the gun safe for her and to keep it a secret, that nobody should know that she gave him this firearm. Obviously, the husband told Judith, and it was with that firearm that Judith went to the police and said, "This is your murder weapon." The police did forensically test the firearm against the shell casings found at the crime scene, and it was proven to be the murder weapon. All of this, traveling to South Africa and back and borrowing the gun, was later confirmed in court that this in fact did happen. When Judith provided the police with this murder weapon, that is when they started to thankfully relook the case. And they then found that Tini and Ria had struggles in their marriage since 1993. This is my own assumption. This is nowhere mentioned in court documents, but to me it's very significant that marriage problems started a year after Mariette and Justin arrived in Gaborone. Just timing-wise, very suspicious. They even separated at some stage, but then they reconciled. And one of the reconciliation steps was that Tini got a job for Ria at a very large company of who the general manager was, Henny Kutsia. Now that is also a name that you can remember because he comes up later on, also as part of Mariette's defense. So Ria then started working, I guess, around about 1993 with Henny Kutsia. The police pounced on Tini and Mariette on the 7th of October 1996. Apparently Tini was pulled over. He was on his way somewhere when he was arrested, and there was a discussion between him and the police officer. The police officer said, "Well, we have the firearm that murdered your wife," and Tini just blurted out, he said, "I hope the gun and the shell casings don't match." So that was very weird for the police, because if somebody killed your wife, wouldn't you be happy that they are now finding who did this? So Mariette and Tini was arrested after all of the evidence was confirmed, and they then let Tini go because Tini was out of the town at that stage he had a solid alibi for the night, but Mariette was held in custody. Part of the rumors, the gossiping, everything, the police found out that Tini had promised Mariette several times that he is going to leave his wife, that they will get divorced, and then him and Mariette can live happily ever after. Police theorized that Mariette could not wait any longer, and she decided to take matters in her own hand, and that is when she went to South Africa to get the gun, and that she went into action and murdered Ria. Mariette refused to talk to the police for 3 months. She also refused to tell Tini anything for 3 months. She denied that she had anything to do with killing Ria, and Tini believed her. Her kids believed her, Ria's kids believed her, Ria's family believed her, and her own family believed her. So they were all saying that the Botswana government is framing Mariette just to close this case quickly. However, the evidence all pointed to Mariette. And it was after 3 months that Mariette made a statement to say, yes, she did bring in the gun into Botswana, and she is aware of it, that that is a crime, but that it was not her who shot Ria. And I will tell you that fanciful theory a little bit later. It's really very strange, and I don't know how she came up with it, but Tini kept on believing in Mariette. After 10 months in custody, Mariette was given bail. She could go home, and in that time that she was released and on bail, she and Tini got married. Now, just to put this in perspective, this is a man getting married to a woman that is under suspicion of killing his wife. He 100% believes that this woman did not kill his wife, and he marries her. That is very, very strange to me. The long-awaited trial started in 1999 in the Labotse High Court. It was Judge Isaac Abugaye who presided over the case. As with our African courts, we don't have juries, and we have a judge who presides over murder cases. The prosecutor's case was that Mariette Bosch had motive, means, and opportunity to kill Ria Wolmerans. Motive: Mariette wanted Ria's husband and life. Means: she had a firearm. She traveled 6 hours to a place to get a firearm and 6 hours back. And opportunity: Ria would easily have opened that door to her best friend, and Tini was nowhere near to stop her from doing what she wanted to do. Judith Bosch was the star witness for the prosecutor. She testified in court that Mariette had professed her love for Tini way before Ria's murder. They had a relationship that was kind of like an unspoken secret, and Mariette told Judith about many encounters that Tini and she had, that they would travel from Botswana to Johannesburg, get a hotel room, and she in detail explained the intimate intercourse that they had, the sessions that they had, and how good it was, and that Tini promised her that he is going to leave Ria, and that Tini and Mariette would get married and be happily ever after. And all of these things took place while Ria was a diligent homemaker, working 9 to 5, looking after the kids, and Tini and Mariette would slip away, get hotel rooms, and have an affair. All of what Judith has said was backed up by evidence, and a very grim picture was painted from what type of person Mariette was. Mariette's story, which she took 3 months to come up with, and that's just my opinion, is very fanciful. Tini believed this. Tini was wholeheartedly backing Mariette, and it was now no longer a burglar. Mariette confessed that, yes, she did travel 6 hours to get the gun and 6 hours back to bring the gun into the country unlawfully, but she was hypnotized to do it. Mariette said that Henny Kutsia, that was Ria's boss, had dinner with her. I'm not sure if they also were friends, but they had dinner one evening, and that Henny had drugged Mariette with Rohypnol, which we all know is known as the date rape drug. It's a sleeping tablet. So Mariette claimed that Henny put that into the wine that she was drinking, and as soon as the tablet took effect, he hypnotized her because he was a master hypnotist, and he hypnotized her to go to South Africa, get a firearm, come back, and hand him the firearm. I am not a pharmacist or a doctor or a hypnotist, but I am not sure if all of that goes together, because how long will Rohypnol be in your system? Driving 6 hours, visiting people, getting the gun, sleeping over, driving back, giving Henny the gun. And then Mariette said that it was Henny who killed Ria. Why? Because Ria found massive scale of fraud being committed by Henny in the company that they were working for. The police investigated these claims of a massive fraud scheme and nothing was found. So the claim that Henny killed Ria was not true and could not be substantiated. The question was also, but why did you take 3 months to tell anyone, Mariette? The answer was that Henny hypnotized her and told her not to tell anyone. And she was very, very fearful of her life, of Henny. And that is why she only decided 3 months after her arrest to tell anyone about this theory. The police also, after they confirmed that there was no large-scale fraud going on, they went through all possible avenues of who would want Ria Wolmerans dead. And nobody except Mariette wanted Ria dead. Mariette's alibi was that she was at home the whole evening. She never left the home. So how could she have killed Ria? Her daughters, who I feel very sorry for and who supported their mother, and which I can understand, they testified that their mother was there the whole night. Unfortunately, the domestic worker saw Mariette leave at about 8 o'clock at night. So the domestic worker testified according to that. And that then brought the daughter's testimony in question. And it was the 8 o'clock time frame was round about the time frame that Ria would have been murdered shortly after that. On the 21st of February in the year 2000, Judge Isaac Abugaye found Mariette Bosch guilty of the murder of Ria Wolmerans. He also found that she was not acting under the influence of someone else, and that included Tini Wolmerans. If he found that she was acting under the influence of somebody else, the sentence would have been different. He found her completely guilty and acting upon her own accord. And I want to read you what the judge said to Mariette in court that day. He said, "I have searched the trial records to find anything, however minute, to reduce your blameworthiness. I have not been able to find anything. The crime was carefully planned with the motive of enabling you to take over the husband of the deceased. It was committed with no mercy for the victim. You desire to eliminate the deceased, in order to be able to marry her husband. I have no doubt that this crime was premeditated. It took the judge 30 minutes to read the full verdict. Mariette was described as a manipulative murderer who killed her best friend to get to her husband. After the verdict was read, he asked Mariette if she wanted to say anything to the court. And I'm also going to quote what Mariette had said. She said, "I am not guilty. You are, my lord, sentencing a woman for something she did not do." After Mariette's plea of innocence, the judge adjourned the court, and he only took 5 minutes before they reconvened, whereupon he read Mariette's sentence. And again, I want to read exactly what he said. He said, "You will be returned to prison, and there you will be hanged by the neck until you are dead. Your body will be buried in such a place as the state president may determine. May the Lord have mercy on your soul." It was an extremely sad situation. Her children, the one child fainted, the other one tried to run after her. The police had to keep the child back from her mother. Her youngest daughter was 14 years old at that stage. It was just a very horrible, horrible scene. And still Mariette's family, Ria's family, Tini, everybody still believed that Mariette was not guilty. Mariette was led from there to the prison cells, and she was kept in solitary confinement. In Botswana, as in a lot of other countries where the death penalty is still valid, you have an automatic appeal, and Mariette's team indicated that they want to continue with that appeal, and until such time she was kept in solitary confinement. She refused to eat for a large period of time, because the prisoners are only served tripe, which is basically the intestines and insides of an animal. It's not the actual meat. She refused to eat that, so she lost a lot of weight. Her family was concerned. They even tried to get the South African government involved, but Mariette's fate was sealed that day in January 2000. So while her appeal was ongoing, Tini and Mariette's family never, I don't know if it's denial, but they never accepted the fact that Mariette will be executed. They kept on saying that we are going to get her out of jail. Tini was so far in debt. He spoke to reporters and mentioned the millions of rands that he has spent on legal fees to free Mariette. He wanted a private detective to follow up this claim of hypnotism. As I said, I don't know if it's denial or if it's just plain love is blind situation, but they did not believe that Mariette will be executed. One of her neighbors said that she feels so sorry for Tini, because Tini asked this neighbor to please not say to Mariette that yes, you will be executed, because they all believe that she's not going to be. That must have been a very strange situation to be in, denying what's actually going on around you. So while this was happening, Tini managed to get a fantastic lawyer or advocate for Mariette. He was based in the UK, and he was drawing up this appeal. They even asked the president of Botswana for clemency, which was denied, and they really still believe that they are going to get Mariette off death row. On the 29th of January 2001, the panel of judges who reviewed Mariette's appeal denied her appeal request. They found that Mariette and Mariette only was responsible for Ria's death. There was nobody else involved or nobody else committed this, and they upheld the verdict and the death sentence. They actually went as far as to call Mariette despicable and wicked. At this point in our story, Mariette has been on death row for about a year. And there's a lot said about the conditions that she was on death row. She was in solitary confinement and a lot of other things. You can read about it, which I wouldn't expect anything more or less for somebody being on death row. And her family tried to get all kinds of organizations involved to free her from this death row. One of the arrangements that I can gather is that if Tini wanted to visit Mariette, he had to arrange in advance, about 3 weeks in advance, and he would then have to wait for approval to visit her. So he arranged to visit her at the end of March, beginning of April. I'm not sure which specific dates. However, he and the 2 daughters, I assume it was Mariette's daughters, arrived a few days before the end of March, and they were told that they cannot see Mariette because the prison is under inspection. So they were told to go back and to come back on the Monday. They were very disappointed because they had a lot of things that they wanted to give Mariette. It seems like the family sent a few things, to bring up her spirits. And it was on the 30th of March, 2001, that Mariette's death warrant was read to her. Now, if I can put the puzzle pieces together, it sounds like Tini was there just before that was read. And what this warrant meant was that on the 30th of March it was read to her, but that she would be executed on the 31st of March of 2001. And Tini was told to come back a few days after the 31st of March. The execution took place on the 31st of March 2001 at 5:30 in the morning. It was Mariette, a prison official, a medical official, and a religious person that was with Mariette, and she was executed and declared dead at the scene. Not Mariette's family or Ria's family was informed about the execution, and that is standard practice in Botswana. Tini was immensely shocked when he returned on that Monday, as told by the prison officials, and when he and the 2 girls arrived at the prison, Mariette's daughters, they were told that Mariette was executed on the 31st of March, and I can just imagine their shock, their horror, their extreme sadness, but the same goes for the day that Ria was murdered. I can only imagine the shock of Ria's children, Ria's family. Tini was very vocal about how he felt that it was so inhumane, it was so unfair that Mariette was alone, Mariette couldn't say goodbye, Mariette could write letters to her children, and she did, in a sense, had the opportunity to say goodbye, where Ria never had that opportunity. She was just brutally shot without knowing that that's going to be her last day. Mariette's execution was in 2001 the first time when a South African woman was executed in Botswana, and only the 4th woman since 1966 to be executed in Botswana. That is the tragic and sad case of Mariette Bosch, who killed her friend Ria Wolmerans. To me, this is such a heartbreaking case because 2 families lost their mothers, 5 children were traumatized, and for what? For a silly affair. They could have gotten divorced, Ria could still have had her life and her children, and Mariette and Tini could have been together. My question has been throughout this whole case, did Mariette really act alone? Did she have such a influence over Tini that he really believed her, that he believed this whole hypnotism story? Or was he also involved and made sure that he was not in town the night of the murder? Was Tini such a convincing liar that the police never suspected him? If Tini was involved, would Mariette not have said that? Or did they love each other so much that they just decided not to give up the other one? So tell me what you think. Is Mariette the only one who's guilty, or did Tini also have something to do with it? Or do you believe the hypnotism story? I would love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. It makes a huge difference on the algorithm on YouTube. The more you watch and subscribe, the more likely it will be suggested to other viewers, and the more I would be able to make videos on YouTube. So I really appreciate it. If you haven't seen my previous videos, please go and have a look now. There are some cases that have really not been given enough attention. I hope to bring you a lot more of these videos so that you can stay vigilant, so that your eyes can be open, your ears can be open, and your mind can be suspicious. Because at the end of the day, it's so that we can see these signs and try and prevent it from happening to us and our loved ones. Please comment below anything you would like me to cover in the future, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.